go from here? Do you want to start talking about the football here? Because we've had some pretty good games today. I mean, you got one going on right in front of us.
That's true. None of them involving New York, of course. The less speak about New York, the better.
Going to be par for the course until the end of the season. Yeah. We are not going to be talking seriously, I think, about the Jets and the Giants until draft day.
Yep, exactly. April. I mean, let's face it. Let's wrap up that one real quick. Both teams suck. They're pathetic. There's no offense, no life. Really, not either side of the ball for these teams. The Jets season is over in terms of trying to make the playoffs. 11 straight years of no postseason action. And today's game against the Saints, losing 30-9. I mean, what more can you say? And it's not like the Saints are the Saints of last year, where they're led by Drew Brees and they have Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara offensively and Cam Jordan defensively and all of these great talents. They're a bit banged up. They're on their third-string quarterback in Taysom Hill, and even he had a pretty good game, all things considered, while Zach Wilson had another rough outing, 19 of 42, 202 yards, but he didn't do himself any favors. It sucked. And the Giants, I mean, what can you say about them?
At the very least,
just as bad.
You know what the Jets remind me of? The Jets remind me of our own Seawolves in a way, because not just our own Seawolves in particular, but a mid-major football team, an FCS team, taking on a ranked FBS team like Oregon, okay, and staying with them for about a half, maybe a good chunk of 3/4, and then just flat out running out of depth and getting stomped on the rest of the way. That's essentially what the Jets are like. They'll stay competitive, keep it interesting till halftime, and then the bottom will fall out.
Yeah, that's a fair comparison. I mean, as of late, they're barely even reaching halftime where the games are interesting. I mean, the Jets let the Saints march down the field just to start the game, even though all they gave up was a field goal. But really all they need, it was essentially the Alvin Kamara show versus Jets defense. And in the end, Kamara won against the 11 guys, 27 carries, 120 yards, and a touchdown.
Yeah, it's 75 in the first half, if I recall correctly.
That's right. And again, they're playing against a quarterback who has an injured middle finger, and he'll still manage to run for 2 touchdowns, including a 44-yarder at the end of the game. So, I mean, there's not much to add. This team sucks. They need to revamp everything, top to bottom. Probably not going to. They get the 4th and 7th picks so far in the NFL draft, which, I don't know. I guess that's the one benefit for being a New York football fan, is you have picks 4 through 7, because the Giants, who look pretty pathetic as well, they get the 5th and 6th draft picks if the season ended today, and they're probably not going to move up or down too many spots. So, what can you really say?
Well, the only problem that you have with draft picks when it comes to the New York Jets is who's making those draft picks.
That's true.
And that is a problem that needs to be addressed. The only problem there is who's going to address it. Actually, I take it back. Kamara had 94 of 129 total first half yards. Well, 94 of 120 total first half yards for the entire team. So he was essentially the offense in the first half.
Yep. The one on 11 and 1-1. And the one was the Goliath in this case. It wasn't even David. Like, that's how bad this Jets team is. Which we've been talking about the last 13, 14 weeks. So,
Oh, this will get you going. Kamara, with 362, broke a tie with Roger Craig, 358, for the most receptions by a running back in their first 5 NFL seasons. I love when they dig these things up.
Oh, it
does
incredible.
Tell you something.
It does. It really does.
Saints defense, 21 quarterback pressures with Carl Granderson, Marcus Davenport, and David Onyemata, each generating 4. So the Saints did exactly what they were supposed to do, and the Jets pretty much did what they were expected to do. 30-9, the final. And then we have to. And the other thing that's been happening more often in the NFL is that the Giants and the Jets have been playing at the same time. And for somebody like me who grew up watching both because, my father started watching both when they were still in two different leagues. So it became customary at home to watch both. So when you can't do that, when they're both on at 1 o'clock, that kind of sucks. But so I got a 1, I got a 4. The only problem was by the time halftime of that 4 o'clock game, I was switching back to Channel 2 to find out what their afternoon game was, which was of course Tampa Bay Buffalo. Yeah. And I said, get me out of this one.
Yeah,
and you know what? I guarantee you, everybody else is doing the same.
You know what, Matt? You're 100% correct because recently data came out. I got to credit the Reddit of the NFL doing a report on viewership of the audiences, both overall and in the market. And although the Giants and Jets are among the top half of the league in terms of overall viewership for games, in the New York market, or in their market, in just their market alone, the Giants and Jets are among the 3 worst and least watched teams overall. So it's clear you're not the only one that's tuning out of those games. And quite frankly, I had those New York games on, but I was way more interested in Dallas, Washington and Tampa Bay, Buffalo. Two games where playoff status was really on the line. And, really 2 really important games in terms of finding out what identity are these teams bringing.
Well, I'll go through the motions on the Giant game because we kind of have to.
Well, they did too, so you won't be alone.
Yeah. Okay. Last 2 minutes of the first half. Giants punt pins the Chargers on their 4-yard line with 2:01 remaining. A 3-and-out sets up Mike Glenn and company. First down on the Chargers 41. Down 17-7, very much in this game, right? Couldn't even make a first down. 3-and-out.
Don't forget, third down play. Mike Glennon passed, which is over the middle, and was so far thrown behind Devontae Booker, wide open down the middle, that he got a finger on it as the ball sailed by him. Red flag number 1.
There you go. Okay. And then it gets worse because there's plenty of time for the Saints to get the ball back, and Herbert throws a 59-yard deep ball for a touchdown.
Yep. 22 seconds, Matt, in between that missed Giants first down conversion and Herbert finding the end zone.
So 24-7 at the half. Could have been 17-14. Could have easily, if they were even slightly halfway decent, that game should have been 17-14 at the half. Forget it. And that was it. You might as well switch to Tampa Bay Buffalo then.
It's actually incredible because that's the 7th time this season an opponent has scored a touchdown in the final 2 minutes of the first half against New York. New York has been outscored 59-0 in the last 2 minutes of first halves this season. Wow. I was told.
The breakdown stats are even worse than the overall stats.
Yeah.
I start looking at stuff like that.
I lost track of which team is the worst overall in the last 5 years. I think the Jets are still 1 game behind the Giants, but New York's still the 2 worst teams since 2017, record-wise. I think, 20, 21, 54 at this point? They're going to get 60 losses before they even hit 25 wins.
Very famous story, 1978. Because remember, the Giants went from 1963, the last playoff appearance, to 1981, their next playoff appearance, which meant that my brother was born in 1963 and did not see a Giant playoff game until he graduated high school. Okay. So,
yeesh.
At the 15-year point, somebody rents one of those small airplanes that have the banners trailing them, the ones you usually see fly over the beach.
Oh,
and
yep.
this one says, 15 years of lousy football, we've had enough. And he still had 3 more to go. That's the state of New York football right now. And the similarities, you have ownership that, well, I don't necessarily think that everybody has to be Jerry Jones. As a matter of fact, what's Jerry Jones done? Okay, as owner of the Cowboys, got AT&T Stadium built, but they haven't won God knows how long. It's the old, dangling the carrot out and pulling it away. But we're beyond inept here. And where did the learning curve break? I mean, that's the thing that you have to look back at, because, they had that nice stretch. George Young, Ernie Accorsi running the team and, getting to 2 Super Bowls. And then 10 years ago, it all just died. The Jets, we already know about their years of dysfunction, but Bill Parcells' plan was to do what he did with the Patriots. Set them up so that they change the culture, set them up so that they can build for the future and leave all that dysfunctional past behind. Now, of course, it was Belichick who threw a wrench in the works, because Belichick was the one who was supposed to do it. But, may not have happened that way because of Jets being the Jets. And he got away because he felt he had a better deal with the Patriots. It turns out he was right. But there is hope when you take a look at the Patriots, because before Parcells and Belichick and everybody like that took over, the Patriots were as messed up as the Jets were. But it takes somebody to make a good hire, make a good decision, and the people in charge of making the decisions at the Jets aren't doing that. And the same thing is happening at the Giants. Somebody at the top has to make a good decision in order to get the ball rolling. And much has been made of Pete Rozelle recommending George Young to the Giants, and that worked out nicely. But this is something we talked about in recent weeks. Back then, Rozelle thought that the NFL needed a good team in New York for the good of the league. Well, they not only has the NFL managed to function without a team in LA for all these years, now they have 2, but not only did they do that, but they seem to be functioning pretty well without decent teams in New York. It's like nobody cares outside New York.
It just barely seems like people in New York care, especially in the management's position. I mean, it's incredible just how many poor moves are constantly made, and just, how things continue to just go from bad to worse, these teams. It's rough. And, there's, really the only the only faith you can have in these teams are, it's young. There's new coaches, there's new coaching staff, a lot of young players. So, there's room for these guys to grow and get experience. But, to me, for watching a lot of these guys play, I don't think these guys are going to be anything more than just average NFL players, second stringers at best for a lot of these guys. It is tough seeing really anyone shine on either of these New York teams, is on the field. To me, the best coach on either of these teams so far is Patrick Graham, the Giants defensive coordinator. And even then, his defense is averagely mediocre in the NFL. These teams got to really make some big management moves, especially for the Giants, getting rid of the GM there now, number 1. But 2, especially with the draft coming up, forget about postseason aspirations. You're the Jets, you already did. Giants, realistically, let's be real, they're not going. So you really got to hit a home run in the upcoming draft, which, especially for the Jets, has been really hard to do the past few years.
Here's something interesting, too. And we're going to talk about this because it kind of applies to the Islanders as well later on in the show. But even during that, 1978 period, 15 years of lousy football, the Giants had a good defense. The Giants had talented players on defense. They had guys like Harry Carson. They had guys like George Martin. They had a core there. And adding LT to it made them great. But the offense was a joke. The offense was abysmal. And when they got Phil Simms, Phil Simms, they knew had a great arm. The only problem is no one could catch his throws. So they worked with him. Jim Fossil, of all people, worked with him and made him into a serviceable quarterback. And Ray Perkins took over the team as head coach. And when they got the offense working to a point where it wasn't letting the defense down anymore, they got better. But at least the Giants had something to build on. This team, neither of these teams have anything like that.
No, they really don't. And that's the other thing too, because to me, it really feels like for management, they really feel like heading into an all season, they think the teams they have now are maybe 7-8 win teams, and their moves can make them 9, 10, 11 win teams. When in reality, the talent they have is enough for 3 wins and 4 wins, which they got now. And it's really tough to see if they could get any more than that. And these teams need a complete overhaul from the top down, and especially in the Giants case, where you have the Maras picking for the last, 15, 20 years. They need an actual president of football operations to actually, get this team, in shape. Because especially with the Giants, they have 2 Super Bowl championships in this decade or the past 20 years. And it's been cool to see and cool to watch that. But if you noticed, unlike a lot of other Super Bowl teams, they're not contenders the year or 2 after. And in most cases, it's because they try to put a Band-Aid on everything instead of blow it up, really rebuild, really retool, and get guys who are going to be on this team 6, 7, 8 years, as opposed to a complete roster overhaul and complete roster turnover where you're replacing one average or mediocre player with another time and time again, like we've been seeing the past 3 or 4 seasons.
Well, the other thing that we have to remind ourselves is that even in those 2 Super Bowl seasons, they were 9-7 overall.
That's right.
In their record. They didn't win the division. They won wild cards. They played on the road. I don't recall in either playoff run them ever playing a home game in the playoffs.
I think they did in 2011 against Atlanta.
Yes, they did. Yeah. They did.
That was it.
But that's it. But I mean, the previous Super Bowl appearance under Jim Fossil, when they lost to the Ravens, they had the NFC Championship at home. That is still, the only NFC Championship, only conference championship I ever covered because, first of all, they were all on the road. Yeah. The Giants were on the road for their 2, and the Jets were on the road for their 3. And go ahead.
I was like, even in the early 2000s, you remember this, just covering them, on the road. The biggest difference between, the Super Bowl teams in 2007 and 2011 and the Giants in the early 2000s, at least they were consistent. The late 90s to, about 2004, 2005, the Giants were a playoff contending team, even if they didn't make it all the way. They at least had that foundation and had the tools and the players and that depth where, they can rely on guys like Tiki Barber, Michael Strahan, Osi Mura for 4, 5, 6 years.
Right, exactly. And after those guys retired, or, hey, Jason Pierre-Paul's still playing, believe it or not, with half a hand.
That's right, but with 9 fingers, 8 fingers.
That was, I think, looking back, one of the turning points for the worse for the Giants. When they let him go after, that dumb incident with the firecracker. I'm not saying that they should have kept him or nothing, but that seemed to be the start of the decline.
Yeah, there was a slew of, big releases, especially after the 2011 season, seeing the guys exit one way or another, like, Mario Manningham immediately going to San Fran, who ended up in the Super Bowl the year after, or as you said, JPP, who left and is now on Tampa Bay and won a ring last season. Like Justin Tuck went to Atlanta. They were a playoff contending team while he was there for a couple seasons. Victor
Right.
Cruz, of course, was a big factor in that postseason run for the Giants in 2011. He's gone, goes to the Eagles a couple years later. And although he doesn't really play, it's still a big loss. And yeah, they managed to get Odell Beckham, but he only had one playoff game with them. And, even now, he's not the same Odell he was before. So, yeah. But it just goes to show, just that depth, those guys that I named. Michael Strahan had his retirement ceremony, his jersey retirement ceremony, 2 years ago? And a big reason is because he was a mainstay of that team in the 2000s. There's no mainstays on this roster.
There is no Strahan, no Taylor, no Carson,
no Eli,
no Jordan, none of those guys, no Eli, no guys. Matter of fact, even the most diehard Giant fan would have trouble following the current roster. There's nobody to really hang a hat on.
It's true. The closest you got is Saquon Barkley, and when he's not injured, he's not doing much behind pretty mediocre line, and he doesn't have that same impact he had in his rookie season. He passed 60 rushing yards for the first time this season, had a touchdown. I mean, great.
So much more was expected of him.
Exactly. And it's sad because, you would think when he was drafted, or even this time last year, no way you could trade Saquon Barkley. No way. He has to be, a centerpiece of the Giants offense. And now, to me, I don't really see a point in keeping him if you can flip him for some more picks.
If he's got value, you got to deal him. Because he's not part of the future. He's not going to be around when this team turns it around. And that's always the case when it comes to trading stars. If he's young enough, and he is young, but now, how young is he? What was his fourth year?
Yeah, fourth year, 24 years old. 26 years old, there you go.
Yeah.
And the shelf life of a running back,
came in at 22.
The shelf life of a running back isn't necessarily that long nowadays anyway. Remember Todd Gurley, 2018, he was in the Super Bowl. He was arguably the best running back, not one of the best in the league. Now he can't even sign on the practice squad.
Yeah, I mean, NFL, not for long. But that tells you, everything you need to know from that point of view because, well, first of all, the Giants won with different running backs, different guys all over the place. But the defensive guys were the mainstays. Quarterbacks were mainstays. But the running backs were interchangeable. Yeah, even the first two Super Bowl wins, you had Joe Morris and Otis Anderson. You didn't have necessarily the same running back for the past 10 years. Very, very few running backs do, of course, last that long. But in any case, these are the things that also attract new fans. And you already see it. Well, first of all, it's a lot easier to follow your fantasy players, number one, games you're betting on, number two, in today's NFL because every single game is on the air. Every single game is available by some means. It's either available on Sunday Ticket or Red Zone, or there's always an out-of-town game on. You got Monday Night Football. You got Thursday Night Football. You got Sunday Night Football. So you got 3 national games a week as opposed to only 1 back in the day. So, again, who needs the locals? Except if you want to go there, the only problem is that, hey, the tickets are prohibitively expensive to begin with. And you also have to deal with the weather in Buffalo. And you also have to deal with the traffic. And you have to deal with all the other stuff. Football is so TV friendly, you might as well go to your corner bar and watch it there. Or on your big screen TV at home and watch it like I'm doing it right now.
Yeah, and especially, now as we get into really the heart of the season in the sense of, these really are the most important weeks. And, to me, week 13 to now, week 16, week 17, they're really the heart of the season, because this really determines not only, what are these teams' identities entering the postseason, number one, but who is going to make the postseason, number two, obviously. And on top of that, just, what team is going to hold on to their leads in the standings, and which team is going to choke and really have a tough offseason this offseason. And there were a few fun games to go over, Matt. There were a couple of tight contests. Really, to me, no upsets, but a few close ones that were really down to the wire.
Well, here's something. The game that you tuned away from is the one I think we should talk about first. And that, of course, is Tampa Bay Buffalo. That was a game that was on CBS when the Giants were making fools of themselves. And you take a look at that game, and you're impressed with the fact that the Buffalo Bills made such a great game of it. They were able to tie the game. They were able to come from behind, and you had the feeling that maybe finally that they finally had Tom Brady's number.
Agreed. Yeah. It's been a tough task defeating him. Yep.
And here's another thing. But the most interesting about it is that Brady, he had more than one chance to put the Bills away. But he didn't get the first one. But he did manage to finally do him in the second time. So what happened was he was sacked on third down by Matt Milano, and that kind of spoiled his chance to put it away in regulation. But then, for the Bucs' first overtime possession, he was pinned at his own 6-yard line, but he did get a defensive PI flag, but he brought him to the doorstep of their own goal line and then hit Rashad Perriman on a crossing route for a 58-yard game-ending score, 363 yards, 2 scores, no picks against the NFL's number one ranked pass defense.
Yep.
So a little friendly reminder, okay, that still on you.
Yeah. Reminder, he said, who's the boss? And he was incredible once again. 31 completions, 363 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. He said against entering today the best defense in the NFL in terms of scoring defense-wise.
Against the pass.
Yeah, against the pass. Yeah. And, this team, this Bills team, I think something they do really well is they attack the quarterback fast in terms of blitz. But Brady just decimated the blitz when he saw it. He was passing, I think, at around 500%, or rather 50% when the Bills blitz on him, including that game winner. Left Perriman wide open on the crosser because they didn't have a defensive back, play in the middle of the field or in double coverage. He did pretty good overall. A lot of short passes as usual. Still he's able to get 221 yards on passes that range from 1 yard to 9 yards. So, he was playing safe, conservative football, and it worked once again. And I think for Tampa, they got to be proud that the running game really stepped up, with Leonard Fournette having another strong showing with 132 yards, including a 47-yard touchdown in the first.
So, where does it leave them? Well, first of all, I think a lot of people were disappointed because they thought maybe this was a turning point. Maybe somebody finally gets better. This could be the turning point of Brady's career. Maybe he starts going on the decline. Nope. I mean, defies nature. It's amazing. First of all, he's been amazing his entire career. The fact that he's been amazing as long as he's been is what makes him the greatest of all time. And the fact that you thought that after him getting sacked in that last drive in regulation, you thought that maybe the Bills finally got the better of him, and it just didn't happen. And then he gets his, another chance in overtime and runs away with it.
Yeah, so, and he almost welcomed that. To me, it felt like he almost welcomed that, getting the ball back at his own 3-yard line, and he was able to get it done regardless. And again, big reason was because he set up the long bomb with the short passing. Getting a couple of short passes down, it eventually led to him finding Perriman for that 50-plus yarder.
Okay, so another game went into overtime today, and that was San Francisco-Cincinnati. They come out of the deal with identical 7-6 records, which we'll get into momentarily. By the way, WUSB Stony Brook, a little bit past the 11 o'clock hour. But the story here, 2 halves. The Bengals nearly ran out of time before Joe Burrow and the Cincy offense woke up. Burrow extended the play to find Jamar Chase on a touchdown, make it 20-13 with 9:20 left. Then followed that up with a 7-play, 87-yard drive, capped by a 32-yard strike from Burrow to Chase. And then the receiver ran a route to free himself down the sideline, hauled it in, and then one-upped himself by following an incredible 29-yard pass completed under significant pressure to Tyler Boyd and the strike to Chase. So Burrow threw the Bengals back into the game, helped them take the lead in overtime, and that definitely demonstrated what and why he was the number 1 pick in the 2020 draft. Too bad he doesn't also play defense. So the Niners end up pulling it out because what they did, they watched their 14-point lead disappear in the fourth quarter. They failed to make a game-winning field goal in regulation. They lost a coin toss, and it looked like they were dead in the water. But they held Cincy to a field goal before covering 80 yards in 7 plays on the other end for a touchdown. And that saved their season. And yes, they come out with a 7-6 record. And if you look at the standings out in that NFC West, it puts them in a pretty nice position as far as the wild card is concerned. Arizona and the Rams, they're 2 games behind the Rams. Well, actually, game and a half behind the Rams because the Rams are 8-4. And they still have a fighting chance. But look at all these teams that are in the, game over, game under, all over the league. Let me count the number of 7-6 teams in the NFL right now. The Bills, 1. Cleveland, 2. Cincy, 3.
Niners, 4.
Indy, 4.
Oh, yeah,
Niners, 5.
And that's it.
Denver, 6.
There you go.
Okay. Let's see.
Honestly, you can count 6 and 7 teams. You count 6 and 7 teams, so there's a few of them as well.
Yeah.
Like New Orleans, Atlanta.
Basically half the league.
Minnesota, the Eagles, Washington, Miami. Yeah, a lot of this league is still in it through week 14. And again, as I said, this is the most important part of the season because a lot of these teams are still in the hunt. It hasn't necessarily been like the past couple of years where most of the field. So I don't think there's a team who has clinched a playoff berth yet. But teams like Arizona, Green Bay, Kansas City are likely going to be up there, along with another team, which we're going to talk about soon in New England.
Yeah, because you take a look at all this. Yes, you have your top teams in the division. And the Chiefs have opened up a very nice margin. Well, actually, not even. They're still only a game up on the Chargers. And they had to win 6 in a row to get there.
Yeah, but they are getting hot at the right time. And you remember what happened last time? Where they went on a streak like this. They ended up going all the way a couple seasons ago.
And then another team that people were giving up on early in the season, and they will go on a complete tear. And they're all of a sudden the Chiefs of a couple of years ago.
Well, a couple issues for them was, number one, you don't poke the bear.
Mm-hmm.
Vegas starting out the game, before the game, dancing on the Chiefs logo. Oh boy, that's a mistake. And the Chiefs made him pay instantly after Kansas City converted that to a touchdown on the first play of the game. And the Raiders, they were annihilated today, losing 48-9 in this contest. And Mahomes,
it gets worse.
It does, yeah.
Because they lost 41-14 in Week 10.
Yep.
So the two meetings, intra-divisional game, two meetings, and the Chiefs score 40 points in both games. That's rubbing your nose in it.
Oh, yes. The Raiders team was just outmatched. Carr had a bad game. He was only averaging, I think, about 5 yards per passing attempt, and we couldn't find any targets down the field. We really only had one receiver today in Hunter Renfrow. He had 13 catches for 117 yards, although 70 of those came after the catch. So it's not like, Carr was throwing dots 10 yards plus out. A lot of his passes came from inside the line of scrimmage, and there was really no breathing room for a lot of these offensive players for the Raiders. The defense held strong and did a great job, especially getting to the quarterback and Carr. 5-6 separate players credited for at least half a tackle in that game.
Uncanny what Kansas City has been able to do. I mean, they've always had the talent, but to go on, and not only that, to pull away, get to the top of the AFC West, still obviously not wrapped up.
Yeah, but offensively,
the Chargers can't play the Giants every week.
That's true. But again, offensively, it is getting scary again, Matt. The Kansas City receiving corps did not drop a single pass today. Tyreek Hill led the way, obviously, in terms of yardage, but Josh Gordon was there right behind him and had a touchdown as well, his first of the season. So, that receiving corps did a great job alongside Kelsey. Patrick Mahomes, again, another great day. He has one pretty much every day, so it's not really, saying too much. But,
by the way,
six straight for Kansas City.
I don't know if you have Chicago Green Bay on your monitor right now, but they just showed a fan who constructed like a Google page where the question was, who owns the Chicago Bears? And the answer is Aaron Rodgers. By the way, 38-27 Green Bay with 7:10 remaining. But it just makes me think of, who owns the Bills? Tom Brady. And who owns the Chiefs? Not who owns the Chiefs. Who owns the Chiefs? That's from Slapshot. Who owns the Raiders? No one named Davis. Somebody named Mahomes. So.
Oh yes.
KC rolling along.
Yeah, they're looking good.
By the way, Aaron Rodgers is too.
Oh yes.
But as a matter of fact, let's talk about this game that's going on right now. Regular season. Okay, we're talking about Matt LaFleur, 35-9 record. I'm looking at these. Okay, third most wins among head coaches in the first 3 seasons. Seifert 38, Harbaugh 36, Matt LaFleur 35. That's nice. But what's nicer too is that the Bears, and the Packers have been longtime rivals dating back to George Halas and Curly Lambeau. But in more recent years, since Aaron Rodgers has been part of the Green Bay Packers, the Bears couldn't buy a win. And for the first half of this game, they kept it very interesting. Then the third quarter, Rodgers became Rodgers again, and we're basically watching Green Bay put on a show.
Yeah, and a big reason for that was because it was Chicago up, I believe, at the half. Was it 17-14? And big reason for that was because Justin Fields went long, finding, I believe it was Jakeem Grant as well as I think Demary Bird on long 46-yard and 54-yard touchdown passes. And they really dominated the secondary of Green Bay in that first half. But the problem is just the offense wasn't able to stay on the field. And in this game, it's Green Bay who leads the time of possession of over 32 minutes so far. And a big reason for that is that they're able to stay on because of not only how good Aaron Rodgers is playing right now, overall, 27 of 35, 331 yards, 3 touchdowns. But they have over 310 passing yards in this game alone. So they're staying on the field. He's
it's
not.
All
He's
short
doing
passes.
That's right. He's doing a lot of short, 4 or 5 yard passes and letting the running backs or receivers do their thing. On top of that as well, runs where, the Bears secondary is just missing tackles and allowing Green Bay to extend their drives or extend their runs by 4 or 5 yards and get another first down.
Yeah, I'm sure the strategy was no need to air it out with these guys. Just throw it to the tight ends and just grind it. And that's what they're doing right now. They're back in the red zone. We're inside the 5 right now. So I think he got first and goal. So coming out of the commercial, they'll be looking to pound it in once again. But now they can't really let up. Even with about 5 minutes left, 38-27, it's still theoretically a close game, even though it didn't look like that throughout the second half. But here we go again. Aaron Rodgers was, maybe he's the second from the GOAT, one of the best quarterbacks in the history of the NFL, and even one of the best quarterbacks currently still playing. But he looked like an idiot a few weeks ago with the whole COVID protocol and said I was immunized, but I didn't really get vaccinated, blah, 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 blah. And maybe that cost him, the hosting job on Jeopardy, who knows. But he bounces back and proves that he can still play football. This is an interesting thing, too, because you remember this time last year, Drew Brees and Aaron Rodgers were having MVP seasons, and we were wondering whether either or both were going to come back the following year. Brees did not, and of course Rodgers did.
Yeah, that's right. And, Rodgers definitely motivated getting another ring, proving, Green Bay wrong, in terms of their response to him earlier in the season. Of course, they have that agreement. I don't know if it's written in the contract, but an agreement that if Rodgers wants to go at the end of the season, they are going to move him from Green Bay. So that's definitely something to keep in mind as well. If how well they do in the postseason, assuming they make it, which they're on pace to do right now as a 3rd seed, potentially playing against San Francisco, the 6th seed. So it's definitely a big factor there for sure, and something not escaping Rodgers' minds, or I'm sure the ownership of Green Bay. And as you said, you're right. It's just looking at how everyone's playing the season. To me, Brady has definitely, been probably the best quarterback. Aaron Rodgers right behind him. Kyler Murray having himself a great season as well. Josh Allen, as you said, almost single-handedly carrying that Bills offense back into the game against the Buccaneers. Those are definitely 4 guys who are keeping the MVP race hot, along with running back and Jonathan Taylor of Indianapolis.
Exactly. And, yep, another Bills, another wishful thinking, another Packers touchdown. But 4:33 remaining, 44-27, awaiting the extra point. But that game started out looking really good, and then, the bottom fell out. And Green Bay is going to cruise to another victory.
It's a win for Giants fans, too, because 6th overall pick right now would be Chicago's, but that gets transferred over to New York. So New York, the Giants was still the 5th and 6th picks.
Now you just need somebody to execute the picks properly. So, other games that stand out. Okay, Pittsburgh. Dallas, Washington. Okay. This was, of course, an NFC East game where Washington could have definitely used the win. They are now tied with the Eagles at 6-7. As we said, one of many, like half the league is either 7-6 or 6-7. But it also kind of got Dallas back on track. Because remember, they went through a rough spot. Now they've won 2 in a row. And it looks like they're pretty close to getting the NFC East sewed up.
I agree. Facing New York again next week, and I wouldn't expect results to be different from last time those two teams faced off. It's probably going to be an easy Dallas win. And yeah, they're probably going to secure the NFC crown. At least this year, more deservingly than last year when Washington did it, just barely eking out a plus 500 season. It was really the defense, I thought, that stepped up for the Cowboys because they dominated. I thought at least the first 3, you go as far as 3.5 quarters, but still managed to let Washington get back into the game, surrendering the final 12 points of the fourth quarter. But defense came up big in the final 2 minutes of the game, and we were able to shut down Taylor Heineke and secure a win for the Cowboys.
Well, as we said, badly needed win. Washington had won 4 straight, gave their fans some hope, but Micah Parsons kind of stripped it away.
Oh, yes.
Because, he strip sack, scooped up for a touchdown return by Dorrance Armstrong. He beat 4-time Pro Bowler Brandon Scherf on the play, blitzing through the B gap on the offense's right side, dropped Taylor Heineke. He followed with another sack later in the first half, 5 pressures, 17 pass rushes, and his 21.1% pressure rate for the season is on pace to be a record for the next-gen stats era, which is 2016 to present. That's something we talk about some future date. But he is legit. 6 straight games with at least 1 sack.
It displays his ability, he gets to the quarterback so fast, especially off the edge. He's so good, just beating the opposing lineman and just getting to the QB. 9.5 sacks in his last 6 games, which I'm pretty sure is a record, maybe a team record for, most multi-sack games as a rookie. And, Jamar Chase is probably going to end up winning Rookie of the Year because he's having a great season paired with his former LSU teammate and Joe Burrow in Cincinnati. But defensively, Micah Parsons has been a huge standout amongst the latest incoming class for in the NFL. As you're talking about, he is quickly finding his groove and is definitely complementing this Dallas defense, which has really stepped up from last season.
Also, we mentioned Lawrence, Randy Gregory, and this game was really about the Dallas defense. And I think they made a little bit of a statement here. 27-20 in the final, as we said, opened up more distance, got the ship righted again with the second straight win. And you look ahead to what's in store for the Cowboys, and everything points to the playoffs. Everything points to a nice run, especially with that defense.
Yeah. And you can't discredit, too, a little bit luck in the sense that Heineke did go out in the second half of the game. They had to put in a backup quarterback, Kyle Allen, in Washington, even though they were still able to score because of it. And offensively, Dallas struggled 1 of 6 in the red zone this contest. But again, you're going against a lame duck defense in New York, facing off against other conference foes. As you said, all signs point towards playoffs this season. And, it's fun because they're probably going to get the toughest challenge in the postseason in terms of probably playing an NFC West team, whether it be San Francisco, which is unlikely. Well, no, I wouldn't say unlikely, which is a possibility. The LA Rams, who are currently the 5th seed, and the Arizona Cardinals, who are the top seed in the NFC.
Yeah, but as you said, divisional opponents the rest of the way. The Giants, who are zombies, Washington, who may be in or out of the playoffs by that point, 2 weeks from now.
It's depending on a few things. One, on Taylor Heineke's condition, because I thought he's been having a tremendous season for Washington, just individually, and he really raises, I think, the value of that team, because we saw last year, how the team looked, before he stepped in and afterwards, and you go back to that first game where he kept it close against Tampa Bay playoffs. That was a big wake up call, I think. And for a Washington team, they're still 6-7, yes, but they still have a horse in this race for the playoffs. Currently slotted as the 7th seed in the NFC. So they are down. They are not out yet.
Well, after the Giants, as we said, Washington day after Christmas, by the way, Sunday night game, by the way.
It's gonna be a fun
Arizona
one.
and Philadelphia to wrap it up, and if they keep playing like this, they should be fine.
That Arizona game is going to be a great test because, as we were saying, Arizona 10-2 this season, 7-0 road record so far this season. They are the road warriors, undefeated away, and they're going to be facing Dallas away. And so it's definitely going to be a big test for both these teams, especially for the Cowboys. You remember they, been playing a lot of tight contests, but they were able to win today, but it hasn't necessarily always been that case. Go back to Thanksgiving a couple weeks ago where they dropped the game in overtime to Las Vegas. So now that this Cowboys team is really finding, their strengths, especially defensively, if they get the upset win over Arizona, it could have huge ramifications for how this playoff race is looking, especially their seeding in the playoff hunt.
I believe, and I'm looking at this right now, well, in terms of points allowed, as good as the Dallas Cowboys defense has been recently, it doesn't necessarily show statistically because Arizona's defense is much, much stingier, as you would expect from a team that's 2 games better.
It helps when you have a guy named J.J. Watt, manning that defensive line.
Exactly. And 224 points is the lowest points allowed in the NFC. Overall lowest, well, guess who that's going to be? New England. By the way, 7 wins in a row. And again, who's going to stop them? No one in their division. Taking a look, by the way, at what's ahead for them, because before we get into it in depth, because I'm taking a look at their most recent win. Of course, this was a bye this week. They've got Indianapolis. They've got Buffalo day after Christmas. They've got Jacksonville, Miami, and that's it.
Yeah. So you want to talk about dangerous, man.
Indianapolis and Buffalo will be interesting.
Yeah. Well, Buffalo especially because they're out for revenge after, frankly, getting embarrassed on the national stage. Lost 14-10 against a team that attempted 3 total passes, including, I think, just 1 in the first half. It was essentially the running game against the Buffalo defense. And the New England Buffalo game, or running game, came out on top against Buffalo. Lawrence Stevenson, 24 carries. Damian Harris as well, 10 carries on top of that. Both of them, well, Harris especially had about 11 yards per carry, but Stevenson was the one who was really the key force in that offense. 53 yards in the third quarter alone. This team is dangerous everywhere.
It reminds me of, I was once told about a middleweight boxer. I think it was Willie Pep. My dad told me this story. That he won a fight once without throwing a punch. And the reason he won, because the other guy couldn't hit him. Moved around too quickly. So that's what kind of reminds me of when you only attempt 3 passes and use your running game. You're either a junior high school team that doesn't really have a quarterback, or number two, you're just toying with them. And that's what it was like. New England was just toying with them.
It's true. Yeah, honestly, it was sad watching that, Buffalo, especially defensively, but to their credit, New England's such a tough team to strategize because, once again, Belichick has found his comfort zone in terms of having so many pieces fill in so many positions. Someone we didn't talk about was Isaiah Wynn because he filled so many roles for that team on the ground game, whether he was a tackle or a guard or a fullback. He was the guy who essentially was able to shove a lot of the Buffalo defenders out the way for Stevenson and for Harris to get those key first downs, especially at the end of the game. So offensively, you got a few guys who fill several roles, and defensively, obviously, we know the Patriots game plan there, where they got defensive backs who could also play on the line, could also be safeties, cornerbacks, whatever, and they stepped it up as well. J.C. Jackson, another great game, only 36 yards, surrendered on 5 targets, even in the bad weather. So this is a dangerous Patriots team because, again, they got so many guys who fill so many roles that it's so tough to strategize because you don't know what way they're going to be coming at you on any given play. And that's why they were also really able to force a lot of 3-and-outs against Buffalo's because they disguised the blitz or they disguised their zone play so well every play.
The question when Tom Brady left was, what made the Patriots tick? Was it Belichick or Brady? There was no or there. Clearly it was both because both have done well without each other. But it just exposes Belichick's genius all the more because people say, oh, well, they're only good because Belichick's got Brady and, when he was a coach of the Browns, he stunk and he became a coordinator again under Parcells and, he was set up with, the great quarterback. No. When was Brady drafted? Forget it. The fact is that
6th round.
Belichick, clearly made the right move because I don't think, and this is the same thing you can say about a lot of other people who wound up with the Jets, if Belichick had stayed with the Jets, he wouldn't have become what he is now.
Yeah, I feel that. And the reason for that is because Belichick runs the day-to-day operations. He is the GM along with the head coach and is essentially, so instrumental on the defensive side and offensive side as well for that team. It's his fingerprints are all over those New England Patriots teams for the last 20 years, everywhere from underneath draft in the ownership spot to the on the field product we've been watching for the past 2 decades. So, it's been so instrumental in that success. And, that's why I thought it was foolish when people said, he couldn't get it done without Brady because, in 2 seasons with him gone, he struggled last year for sure. He rebounded from that pretty well, especially over the past 2 months, drafting the guy straight out of college and really expanding the offensive game. And without really the same name level of talents we've come accustomed to seeing on New England. There's no Stephon Gilmore's or, Tom Brady's or, star receivers like Randy Moss in 07 and 08, no Gronks, It's a lot of young guys who are trying to prove themselves and are doing that so far.
So the AFC East still contended because Buffalo's still there. And Buffalo did lose two in a row. I do believe they're going to bounce back. But let's take a look at what's ahead for them because, naturally we should. Full schedule for the Bills. They are, let's see, get to the last game here. Week 15 will be Carolina. Good. They get New England. We mentioned that. Day after Christmas. Atlanta and the Jets. So, I don't believe they're going to catch the New England Patriots, but they're going to put themselves in a good position for a wild card.
Yeah, I think so too. For sure how they look past couple weeks. Still tough though because there's so many teams, in that 7-6, 6-7 range.
Well, that's the thing. This is going to be like the proverbial game of musical chairs because once the music stops, everybody falls into the chairs. There's going to be somebody, odd man out. And you really can't predict. I mean, there are some teams that you think are going to be a lock, but even a lot of the first place teams in each division, they have a team that's a game behind them.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, Dallas, I think, is going to pull away in the NFC East because they are that much better. The Packers are going to pull away in the NFC North. They're going to go to 10-3 with this win that they have now, 45-30, by the way, with 108 remaining. Tampa Bay, same thing. Cardinals, same thing. But the Cardinals are only 2 games ahead of the LA Rams. A couple of setbacks here and there. But the Kansas City Chiefs winning 6 in a row, Chargers are right there breathing down their necks. And so is Denver.
And every week is the most important week of the season, but realistically, you want to talk about which games define the season for these teams. It's going to be week 15. It's going to be next week. You start off with Chiefs and Chargers on Thursday for the battle of, I'm pretty sure the battle of first place. If not, the battle of the 2 best teams in that division. And then you have other games like on Saturday with Vegas and Cleveland, New England and Indianapolis. Indianapolis trying to get a playoff spot. Titans and Steelers, obviously, Washington and Philadelphia, battling for the second spot in the NFC East and a potential wild card spot. Other games like the Bengals and Broncos were 2 teams who are really trying to get that final wild card spot. And obviously Sunday night game with the Saints and Buccaneers.
That's a good one. Well, first of all, anytime you're matching, young up and quarterback versus the GOAT, you're always going to, it's something worth tuning into. But I'm glad you brought up something else because this is the time of year, right around 2nd, 3rd week in December, where we get Saturday and Sunday NFL games because colleges are done, except for the bowl games. And, of course, the playoff of the, after the first of the year. But that means, entire weekends of NFL football. And you know what? In a way, the fact that the New York teams aren't in contention doesn't mean that it can't be just as entertaining. Look how much little time we spent on the Jets and the Giants and how much time we spent on the rest of the league. It's much more interesting. I'd much rather watch the out-of-town games.
Oh, agreed. And there's a big reason for that is because, again, teams here are so tough to watch. Meanwhile, you look at virtually every other division, and they got, all 4 teams still in the hunt. Obviously, you take out the AFC South, it's really just Indianapolis or Tennessee. Houston and Jacksonville are somehow worse than your teams, which is incredible. In the NFC West, you got virtually 4 teams still in it. Seattle's barely hanging on. The NFC North, now it's really about to be a 2-horse race between Green Bay and Minnesota. In the NFC South, you still got at least 3 teams in it with New Orleans, Atlanta, and Tampa Bay. So most of the league's still in the hunt this late into the season.
Which is exactly the way the NFL likes it.